Good morning everyone, Merch Hunter Ricky back, and today we're going to get right into the video topic, which is why the world government has chose to oppress Bartholomew Kuma for his entire life. And right off the jump, I'm just going to say I think it's because he chose to study and look into the history of the Void Century and Nika specifically, and it was something they could never stop because of his Buccaneer heritage. Just simply being a Buccaneer enabled him to know about Nika from a young age due to that being a major part of that race's folklore. Now, we've only been introduced to the Buccaneer race in the last chapter, and already we got a lot more than I thought we would ever get. You know, it seems that the Buccaneer are a cross between human and giants, much like the previous Wotan, the giant and fishman hybrid seen in Long Ring Longland. And it's like, there's probably a reason we don't see a lot of those Wotans anymore, because the world government probably did what they did to the Buccaneers and how they tried to enslave all of Fishman. Like, for the most part, it just seems like a terrible situation all around to be a different race in the One Piece world, especially back in the days of the Void Century and the years afterwards. It seems like the awakening of the public knowledge to the oppression of the world government is very recent, and you know, there's always someone who's going to fight against it and try to rise up and rebel. But the sheer amount of people knowing what the world government is hiding, what they're capable of, and what they're willing to do to get that capability shown to people, you know, the Lucia Kingdom, for example, blowing up a country like that is very risky if people have been to Lucia before. But when you control the world, I guess it's really not that big of a risk, right? So back to Kuma. I think the part of the story that we might not get to see, but will be heavily implied going forward from the God Valley flashback that we are at currently, is when Kuma leaves God Valley and inevitably becomes the king of the Sorbet Kingdom. I think he will find some sort of family inheritance there, or just something that the kingdom itself has kept forever, which could be a chronological order of the way things went in the Void Century. You know, something like how Alabasta kept a note from Queen Lily herself for all these generations, you know? I think something along the lines of the previous rulers of the Sorbet Kingdom, if they were all Buccaneers, you know, maybe one of them has family history tied to Nika. Maybe one of them knows that the Gum Gum fruit is actually the Hito Hito no Mi model sun god Nika, and that could be a major reason why the world government says they committed a grave crime. It might not just be that they were simply on the side of sun god Nika in the quote-unquote ancient kingdom, because we really don't know what the ancient kingdom's name is. You know, we'll find that name because obviously Professor Clover died before he could say it, thus meaning that it will be a very important name one day. But in the meantime, I think that maybe we can try to surmise what happened since then and why they specifically zeroed in on the Buccaneers. They did not care that the Buccaneers would become extinct. If anything, that's what they wanted. We see that Jinbei, he knew why Vegapunk coveted Kuma, right? He says it right there at the beginning of Egghead Island when he's turned into a child. He says Vegapunk coveted Kuma for his strength and his latent abilities. And that's something that was probably overlooked by a large amount of people because, you know, you look at Kuma and yeah, that's a big dude, obviously a strong man. But what we don't know is, how did Vegapunk and Kuma meet? I think that if we are honored to get that flashback, I feel like that will be one of the craziest moments in One Piece coming up, is the meeting of Kuma and Vegapunk, to where, you know, maybe Vegapunk says, hey, your stature, your hair, your eyes, are you a Buccaneer by chance? And, you know, Kuma's like, don't say that too freely, you know? And maybe this could be the reason, you know, simply being a Buccaneer and helping the ancient kingdom and sun god Nika, clearly that's enough to where the world government of the last 800 years hates the Buccaneer race. But I think it's going to go a little bit further than that. I think that because the Buccaneers have a folklore, a rich history of knowing who sun god Nika is, and wondering when he'll come back and liberate them all, and that's something they all viciously cling to. It seems like maybe a Buccaneer in the past knew sun god Nika. I know some people now are saying sun god Nika could have been a Buccaneer, and that might have given birth to the name Pirate. And that's a wonderful theory, a theory that I'm honestly slowly becoming a part of. I like it. I think that I'm on board with this theory. I mean, like, I'm not claiming it as my own, but I do think that there has to be something deeper than simply just being on the side of the ancient kingdom, because there had to have been humans on the side of the ancient kingdom too. And if not, that could also be, you know, a connecting string. If the ancient kingdom was just Fishman and just Skypeans, you know, winged people, and just people, you know, fishmen, tontatas, all the minks, long arm, long legs, snake neck, all the different races, and, you know, obviously giants, sorry, all the different races that were not specifically human, what if they were all together? Even the Buccaneers, and they formed the ranks of the ancient kingdom, and something they did in their rule caught the ire of the current world government. Back then and now, I don't think the world government is going to look too much different. I genuinely think it's going to be Emu, the Gorosei, maybe a couple other players we haven't seen, maybe some Holy Knights that are not alive anymore, but, you know, maybe one of them will bear the name Figureland, maybe one of them will bear the name Saturn, you know, things of that nature. All in all, I think that because Kuma has been viciously targeted by the world government, that they fear someone like Kuma, a Buccaneer, getting the chance to get a hold of the Gum Gum fruit. Regardless if Kuma can have 2 devil fruits, which is just another theory that has recently sprung up with, you know, Blackbeard potentially being a Buccaneer and he somehow has 2 devil fruits, right? But basically, I think they wanted to minimize the risk of Kuma ever getting free and ever getting the Gum Gum fruit. So when he found the Paw Paw fruit, that is actually the mistake they made, because Kuma has the ability to push out and make tangible things like memories, pain, you know, intangible emotional feelings and brain functions that you don't see like with your eyes, you know? And although you can see someone's pain, you can't necessarily see the actual, like, this is the pain bubble, you know? And I think that's the underestimation of Kuma by the world government. Just because they oppressed him his whole life does not mean that he wouldn't fight back. He ended up fighting harder. You know, recently Aokiji said that Garp has a habit of making enemies out of people he raises or, you know, people he trains. Well, look at the world government. They have a habit of making enemies just because they can't help themselves, because they're so evil and they want to oppress the world and control it, stop the spread of knowledge about Nika and the ancient kingdom and the Void Century itself, that they've inadvertently created the biggest task force in the past 800 years finally to maybe stand up and do something about it. And unfortunately, at the head of that is Luffy. And I've said in many videos, Luffy has the ability to show what happens when you F around and find out. I don't know if he's of the caliber to fight Saturn, but I do know something that they can't risk, the world government that is Gear 5 Luffy being seen by Bartholomew Kuma, even if he is a robot right now. The world government has done everything they can to oppress and stop Kuma from being free. Now, granted, we do not know what happens to Kuma after the age of, let's say, 8 right now, up to the God Valley flashback. We do know that at some point, maybe things stabilize because he has that cute little backpack in his background childhood picture that Oda drew for the SBS. He's got the backpack in the Nino Keen book, which is like a Japanese statue for, like, you know, I looked at it up, and this is not my culture, so I don't know the full meaning and context of it, but basically it boils down to children want it, like, being the best they can through study. And that is wonderful. And that to me is where Kuma might even have, you know, gained some family inheritance upon returning to the Sorbet Kingdom. If the Sorbet Kingdom was led by Buccaneers, which we do not know yet, but if it was, and I think there's a chance that there's like a book or a letter, just like in Alabasta, like I said earlier in the video, I think somewhere down the line, an ancient Buccaneer king could have either been Nika himself or just kept a story, a letter about it. Hey, this is proof. Sun God Nika is real. He has been turned into a devil fruit via this method, and when someone takes that devil fruit, they will embody Nika himself, and they will bring down the hierarchy of 800 years. They will stop the world government, and they will become Sun God Nika and liberate the world finally. And I think that obviously is what the world government fears the most, and I think they overestimated that Kuma would be the one to do it. And that's why they kept him oppressed his entire life. Again, we don't know the middle part of his life. We know the beginning right now, and we know not necessarily the end, but the end. You know what I mean? We don't know the technical end. We don't know what will happen, if he'll show up on Egghead, all that good stuff, but we know when he died. And that's when Vegapunk turned him into a cyborg fully. By Marineford, he was dead. Either in Sabaody or Thriller Bark, he said that this will be the last time you ever see me. And I believe he meant that he was literally going in to Vegapunk's office the next day to actually die forever. And that's a shame. You know, Kuma, fantastic character to the point where just seeing what they did to his father physically and mentally broke me. I genuinely had to take a minute after the chapter and just like lightly sob to myself because it's brutal. Like every panel they show Clap, he is more and more hurt, to the point where he even loses an eye right before getting killed by the celestial dragons in front of Kuma. And this is all in effort to stop the knowledge of Sun God Nika. And at the point of getting redundant, I'm going to cut the video here. Recap really quick. I think the world government oppressed Kuma for his entire life up until the point where Vegapunk turned him into a cyborg because he has knowledge of the ancient kingdom, Sun God Nika, and maybe it's in the form of a written manuscript somewhere in the Sorbet Kingdom. Maybe Bonnie has a hold of it. Maybe Kuma found it and the world government took it from him and sentenced him to become a cyborg. Anyways, we'll pull one out for Kuma if he dies in any of the recent upcoming chapters, and I want you all to have a good day. I think that One Piece is a fantastic story that allows us to have these conversations like this, and if you have any comments or anything down below, just go ahead and drop it on the comment section. My name is Merch Hunter Ricky. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm almost to 500, so if we can just get there, that would be fantastic, and I would really appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.